Hello everyone and welcome to my first game development vlog. So I'm currently working on a C++ game engine slash game and I've been working on it a little bit and I thought it was time to make a development blog on it because I thought I had enough to actually do a blog. So let me just show you what it's all about. So when we launch it, we have a scene with a lot of boulders that just kind of float around, and we also have our player character that we can go into third and first person in, and we can also like walk around with him. Yeah, looks kind of weird when you're moving parallel to something. So I have that. You can run, sprint, and it's using rigid body controls, which I've also done in my game engine. So I have a component-based game engine with rigid bodies and transforms, a little bit like how Unity has it, but in C++. And so it controls his velocity, so you can see that when you stop moving he sort of slows down a bit. And then I also have jumping. I also had a crude working system of sphere collision detection, so I can basically do collision detection with spheres, and it works sort of good. I'm getting about 20 30 FPS, hey, actually 60 FPS now, in trying to calculate all collisions and all. It's totally 2,500 boulders, and I have made a simple script where you can just press to shoot boulders like this, and you can see when we hit stuff, they react and just sort of get pushed away. Um, it also works for bolt intercollision with all the other boulders, and I'm a terrible shooter. You can see these two, how these are colliding, and if I hit this one also gets affected. Maybe I can do, see if I get a good shot. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to try and knock this one into this one. See how that would work. Okay, like that. Boom, it hits that one, and now that one is going. So it's using elastic collisions. And that is pretty much all. I also have some simple GUI like a crosshair, like sprites and images that can also change color. Within the shader, I also have animated sprites. Like you can see this Trump thing running here. And yeah, I also have my logo here on the game, and a simple console which you can just add entries to. And here you can actually see how the collision works. It divides the world into chunks. So instead of for every object looping through every other object and checking collisions with it, it actually divides the whole world into several chunks with X amount of entities in the chunks, basically. And then it loops through all chunks, and for every entity, it just checks collisions with the entities in the same chunk, so that it avoids checking collisions with something far away from it that you know it's never going to hit. So that is my sort of optimizing that I came up with. And a flaw with this system is that two, if the entities get really packed together, you sort of have all of the entities it's in the same chunk, so it doesn't really do anything at all. Or if you have like entities really spaced out, you only get like one entity per chunk. You just loop through all the chunks for nothing. I actually have a system that dynamically changed um, the chunk size, which you can see here, the grid size, depending on how spaced the object is. And it notices that, but it first calculates, okay, how long time does it take to check all the chunks and do all the collisions? And then it tries to either increase or decrease the chunk size, and if it gets better, it continues increasing it until it gets worse increasing it, so then it starts decreasing it. So that's why the FPS moves up and down like this, but it also automatically adjusts the chunk size based on several factors, sort of a crude working thing of gradient descent, basically. And then I have some other like player position and looking direction, which updates when I shoot, so that's just something I implemented for shooting. And you can just shoot a bunch of objects, and then you can also see the total amount of entities in the world. and it increases. I also have a resource manager in place in this game. So if I go to here, I have this entity manager, so you can just add entities, and this one will manage them and update all of the entities and do all of that for you. So when you're creating an entity, you can just do new entity and then just give it the parameters instead of having to like store it in a variable or something. So you just can create an entity wherever you want basically. And that's a really good system, I think. And if you just program in C++, you would be terrified by just having a new entity, not putting that variable into anything. You just get a memory leak basically. But in the constructor, it actually adds the current instance of the entity to the entity manager. So it doesn't get lost. Just lose it here, but it's still here. So you can just, this is actually where I add a projectile. You can see here if I can change the object. I think this should work. Probably isn't, but hey. Yeah, you can see now it shoots human models instead. Um, so they have a small sphere collider. Yeah, this looks really weird. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, and for next week, I'm actually going to try and implement box collision detection using the separating axis theorem. So I'll see you all next thing, and remember, happy programming.